Well, it seems to me, though, Professor Kolikoff, that in order to fix things, we have to see and understand the problem. You're outlining the problem. You're showing, very clearly that we're in deep doo-doo. We've got big problems. And yet, ever since Jimmy Carter's cardigan sweater speech, I've not seen any politician with the chutzpah to come out and tell the truth to the American people. I mean, is it going to happen?
Well, if not, we're going to end up printing money out the wazoo, because unless you really, for example, with a tax system, we need an across-the-board consumption tax everything that we consume, including the imputed value of rental value of our homes if we live in mansions, and provide a demo grant, a monthly check that everybody gets to make the program, the tax system, highly progressive. And that's a simple solution to your tax system. It's not 17,000 pages. It would give us the right incentives to work and save, and would collect a good chunk, a lot more money than the current system is, and help the economy grow. Bingo. You got a reform of the tax system. We need a health care system that gives everybody a basic plan. We don't need three different huge government bureaucracies. Everybody gets a voucher that's predicated on how what they have with respect to pre-existing conditions. If you got diabetes, you get a big voucher. If you're perfectly healthy, you get a small voucher. And you take that voucher, you buy a basic plan. We get a government panel of doctors to decide what's covered by the basic plan. If you want to get angioplasty at 98, you buy a supplemental policy, but the basic policy would be such that the total voucher expenditure would not exceed 10% of GDP and forever. Now, right there, we would shave off about half of the fiscal gap of this country just by having that, what I call a healthcare fix. And I have a book called The Healthcare Fix that proposes this. And this is really Medicare Part C. If you look at it, it's a Republican part of Medicare. Even though I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but you could have the Democrats say, "Hey, this is Medicare for all," and the Republicans say, "Yes, and it's our part of Medicare."
Yeah. And
Medicare Part C with a cap and a panel is exactly what we need. And 10% of GDP is a lot to spend on healthcare. It's what Switzerland spends on all its healthcare. So tax system reform, the healthcare reform. Tomorrow I'm going to have an article on Bloomberg of how to fix Social Security, and Jimmy Stewart is dead describes how to fix the banking system. It doesn't take, I could describe those proposals too. They're equally short. So you can have a postcard solution for our four major problems, plus carbon tax for the environmental issues, and you're done. So in an afternoon, you can fix the entire mess that we've got in this country. And I was hoping that the president would be bold enough to come up with the right answer, but right away he went with people that have basically supervised the mess that we have and brought it and fostered it. Not that the prior Republican administration was any better or the prior Democratic one. This is a 60-year-old policy of taking from the young and giving to the old, running a massive Ponzi scheme and using Enron-type accounting to make sure that the major debts don't show up on the books.
You mentioned a moment ago that we need to get back to work, and yet the system as we have it now seems to reward speculation, not work. I'll give you an example. One person a few months ago called me up. He had finished his pre-med, actually had gone through medical school, and had a couple of very impressive Ivy League degrees, and he wasn't practicing medicine. He was running a hedge fund, and his partner was a very impressive Ivy League guy as well, a lawyer with a Yale law degree, and they were not doing well. He might have been doing partly what he was trained to do, but certainly the medical doctor was finding it far more lucrative. The fellow with the medical degree was finding it far more lucrative to run a hedge fund than he was, doing what he was trained to do. It seems to me that just looking at it as a non-economist, as here's a guy that's trained to help people in the medical profession, and yet he's not doing it. How can we? Wall Street seems to reward speculation. I mean, the big money is being made right now. It's being siphoned off to the large investment banks. Are they not? Is it not? These guys are still doing quite well, it seems to me.
Yeah, and they're a large part. They're selling us fraudulent securities that aren't being disclosed, and we saw this. And because of that, the financial system is incredibly fragile, because if you think you're being sold snake oil, as soon as you get a whiff of that, you run for the exit. And so when Bear Stearns went from $57 a share to $2 within the course of a week, or when Lehman Brothers plunged in its value, it was a rumor that basically what they held in terms of assets weren't what they were saying, and their liabilities were much bigger, and they weren't marked into market. And so without knowing whether or not it's true, the rumor is enough, because when you don't have disclosure, you can have financial runs in a second. And that's what we've resurrected. We maintain that system. So limited purpose banking, which is what I'm proposing in my book, Jimmy Stewart is Dead, would take all this out of the system. We would have every financial intermediary that's incorporated operate strictly as a mutual fund company. And we have a single federal regulatory agency, not 120, that would oversee the full disclosure on the web in real time of all the securities that are being held by the mutual fund companies. And when I say disclosure, I mean verifying all the income statements, the employment statements, the getting independent raters who are not conflicted, getting appraisals that are not from companies that are not conflicted, and making sure that there's a rule of law, that we're not having snake oil being sold to us. And so once you have that, and once you have mutual funds can never fail, because all the money comes on an equity basis into the mutual fund. It's like 100% capital requirements. The mutual fund's not borrowing from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
We put our money, and a third of our financial assets are held in mutual funds. Our whole retirement system is basically mutual funds. It's the 401k system. So we're very familiar as people, individuals, with the mutual fund industry, and none of the major mutual fund companies failed. Fidelity didn't fail, Crescent didn't fail,
True.
Charles Schwab didn't fail. So we can run our financial system right through the mutual funds without any of this Wall Street profiting. We would have, rather than having 50% of the Harvard class go off to Wall Street, they would actually do something useful.
Mm-hmm.
So we would take out the entire con job of Wall Street would disappear. And that's large part what's going on here. It's people are front-running other investors. They're selling securities that people don't understand. And this is like the days of before the FDA came aboard and helped us have the rule of law with respect to sale of medications.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large part of the market where there's a sale of snake oil.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I was just thinking, Professor Kotlakoff, about, you mentioned $57 to $2 for Bear Stearns. There's somebody else on the other side of that trade who was making a heck of a lot of money, probably. Let's say stealing a heck of a lot of money. Part of the strategy, and once you get into investing, I know for my part, I recommended to my subscribers, because I'm very bearish on this equity market, that they hold a triple down on the financials right now. So it's very difficult. You sort of get into this, and it's difficult. How do we change? It seems to me what you're saying is, from an academic perspective, makes a lot of sense. But how do you put it into effect? Because if you're going to change the tax system, somebody gets hurt. And it may be good for the major number of people, but there's always special interests that seem to have more influence in Congress than, say, the average Joe Schmo has.
This is the president's job to come. If the president went up to Camp David and put on a sweater like Carter did, and Carter came down the hill and then announced some crazy policies. But
yeah,
there are smart policies. So the president comes down with 4 or 5 postcards and say, this is really what, we've done some temporary things, but this is what we really want to do. Whether we do it right now or my second administration, this is really what we need to get done. And so let's start debating something that would actually work. Or have the fiscal commission, or signal the fiscal commission is now going to meet at radical reform, simple reform, kisses, keep it simple, stupid solutions are what the country needs. And this is why there's so much anger, and this is why the Tea Party has, people have had such a voice here. They see a 2,000-page bill with instructions for bureaucracies to start making thousands of more rules. They realize that something is not all well in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, indeed, and the rules are so complicated, as you pointed out, we can't even understand them. It's impossible to comply with the laws because you can't understand them. The tax code is an example.
I have a company that markets personal financial planning software at esplanner.com, And I have to personally understand Social Security's provisions very, very carefully so that our software gets them right. And frankly, very simple questions like if I'm 63 and my husband hasn't retired yet and I apply for my retirement benefit, does this mean that my spousal benefit will be reduced when he retires? And
okay, Lauren,
yes,
can you hold that thought? I want to come back and ask you a little bit more about that. Well, if you have time, we have another 10 minutes or so with you on the other side of the break that we can talk about some of these things. Can you be with us? Stay with us?
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, don't go away. We'll be right back with Professor Kolikoff.